Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where right and left come to be reasonable. You want a clear example of why our politics are poo-poo? Witnessed the bombast surrounding the bombing in Iran. First, the facts. What do we know? The U.S. planes and pilots dropped what they wanted, where they wanted, and the exit was without loss. Did the bombing succeed? Depends on what you wanted. The pilots certainly did what they were told to do. They succeeded. Nobody has said otherwise. Did the bombings stop Iran from getting a nuke? Permanently? I don't know that that was ever the objective. We certainly don't know that. So is that failure? And again, I would say no, because not even Trump, said we would know that we had destroyed everything for sure immediately. We do know there was a ceasefire immediately afterwards, with the regime basically doing nothing in retaliation and agreeing to stop attacking Israel. And it has held with both sides more so than not so far. So why is the unknown all of a sudden a problem? How is it grounds for impeachment? Why is the president saying the U.S. obliterated the regime's program? The answer to each and all of those questions is the same. The BS game of party extremism that has poisoned our politics. The left, through its most popular member, AOC, came out of the box calling for another Trump impeachment, even though she had no intelligence attached to her assessment. Right after the strikes, despite them leading to a ceasefire, despite there being a 100% chance that any impeachment effort would fail. Why? It's just another extreme move to please the base of the Mirror MAGA movement in her now defunct party. Then came more proof of wanting it to be a failure. The leaked preliminary Pentagon analysis, which said the nuclear sites were not obliterated, but they were severely damaged. First, why wouldn't severe damage be a success? And why would anyone report what was believed with mere low confidence after the whole dossier debacle? Just to play gotcha. That's why. Then it was on, with President Trump, despite being president, never missing a chance to take the bait. Okay? So what did he do? He was demanding leak investigations, which are only called for when a side doesn't benefit from a leak. Same with condemning anonymous sources, right? Then he had the Secretary of Defense take it much lower, a new level of low, but also a reminder. Listen to this.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. What's really happening is you're undermining the success of incredible B-2 pilots and incredible F-35 pilots and incredible refuelers and incredible air defenders who accomplished their mission.
Now that part is BS. The first part, I'll give him, it's a matter of perspective. He shouldn't throw everybody in the same bucket, but that's his choice. The second part is BS, okay? Nobody has said anything about the troops not doing what they needed to do, the pilots, the refuelers, the staff, any of them. Nobody. That is BS, and I'll tell you why I'm sensitive to it. Clearly, I think pushing the unknown as a negative is wrong, and that the media shouldn't do it, right? And clearly I haven't done it here, right? Trump shouldn't say obliterated when he didn't know and when that's not true. So that's what I'm doing here. So I don't see myself as the part of the problem here. But this bothers me. I've lived this before. Asking whether the program was destroyed is not disrespectful of the troops. And I would argue that using the troops as cover against criticism is disrespectful. And also a naked attempt to have the public turn on the press. Now, before you say, oh, that's a little dramatic, I've seen this movie before. Somebody told them to try this, that it would work, okay? And that is exactly what it was about. Listen to this.
These baseless attacks send the wrong signal to our troops and to an enemy that is questioning America's will. As our troops fight a ruthless enemy determined to destroy our way of life.
A lot of you don't remember that. A lot of you are too young to remember that. But I lived it, and it was effective, okay? And let me tell you something. That yellow cake, uranium, existed in Iraq was BS. Congress then voted on a war because of that intelligence. And it was not where 9/11 originated. The murderers were almost all Saudi, and we went into Iraq and then Afghanistan for years and decades and lost countless treasure and so much blood, and so many men and women were wrecked forever, and Iraq and Afghanistan are the same or worse than when we first went. And Congress would never again own a military move, allowing presidents, red and blue, to do whatever the hell they want. The media has plenty of flaws, but we are also the ones who join troops in theater, in the worst of situations. And journalists get hurt, and they get damaged emotionally, and they die, and they go because they believe in the job, and they believe in the patriotism of being there with the men and women who are protecting our freedoms. And I know that because that's why I have done it. I am not a war correspondent. I have no business being in a war zone, let alone unarmed. And I have done it time and again because I know it matters and because I want to justify the sacrifice of the men and women who are there putting their lives on the line and often protecting mine. So I don't need to hear some Secretary of Defense tell me that asking questions about a known unknown is somehow trying to damn the men and women who put their lives on the line. It is professional, if not patriotic, to question the BS when yellow cake is being sold to go to war in a place that did not cause 9/11. And it's not wrong to do it here. And by the way, questioning the effectiveness of the recent bombing in Iran is nowhere near the same level of professional responsibility and importance that the yellow cake was in avoiding a war, okay? But I'm just saying that's where they got the move, and it worked. The public went bad on the media, so we stopped reporting it. I lived it. I was at ABC News at the time. There is certainly no motive to hurt the troops. I would argue, though, he is right. There is some motive to hurt Trump. But guess what? If it's all about just the media, then why did Trump ass-kisser number one, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, say the same thing? Listen.
We're at. The program was obliterated at those three sites, but they still have ambitions. I don't know where the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium exists, but it wasn't part of the target set. I don't want people to think that the site wasn't severely damaged or obliterated. It was. But having said that, I don't want people to think the problem is over, because it's not.
All right, so that's why you question it, because you don't know what the state of the uranium enrichment program is. And it's good that they're sharing intelligence that the bombing had effect in slowing it down, at least. This is all good. Questioning the unknown is not wrong. Playing gotcha with the unknown is wrong. And yes, that happens too. Okay? Now, the ceasefire should qualify as a success, at least while it holds. And while we await more information about our leading enemy's ability to have a weapon that they would certainly use to destroy us, you don't have to be in it to own the left or to own the right. That's all we're seeing in this situation. You just have to be reasonable, okay? Now, a reasonable assessment in this situation is that while we've heard a lot from Israel, Iran, and the U.S. on this ceasefire, we've not heard much from somebody else. Qatar, or Qatar, or however you want to say it. They helped broker the deal. What do they think is going on here? They matter. They matter in the Hamas situation also. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Entin is in Doha and sat down with a high-level Qatari official. Brian joins me now from the Mideast. Thank you, brother, for going over there. Not the safest or easiest place to be right now. What did you learn?
Yeah, his name is Majed Al-Ansari, Chris. He is a senior official. He is an advisor to the prime minister. We asked him about some of the things that you've been talking about what their intel shows with the Iran nuclear sites, also how the ceasefire is holding up. They're very, very confident in the ceasefire, more confident than they've ever been before, they say. Listen to a little bit of the conversation, Chris. Does Qatar have any intelligence in terms of whether the nuclear sites in Iran were fully destroyed?
You know, we are hearing conflicting reports right now from various parties. I don't think that anybody right now can claim first-hand knowledge on what's happening. We've heard President Trump's statements over obliterating the sites. We're getting different information from all sides, but I think we need more time to assess exactly what happened in Iran when it comes to the nuclear program. You all are in such a unique position here because you talk to all sides. And back home in America, I think people are just worried this is going to be like other ceasefires we've seen where suddenly the rockets are flying again. Do you have a feeling this is finally it? You know, I mean, in our line of business, the only choice we have is to remain hopeful, right? We can't give in to pessimism when it comes to dealing with these crises that we are dealing with. If you look at the map of the Middle East right now, the whole Middle East is ignited in different conflicts everywhere. But this is a moment. This is the light at the end of a very long tunnel. Your country has this relationship with Iran, helped negotiate. Just yesterday, we saw leaders in Iran shouting death to America. Do you think Americans should be afraid of Iran? I mean, there's been a lot of talk of sleeper cells, that kind of thing. I mean, let me put it very bluntly. We have been working in this region with everybody. Nobody wants eternal war. There are no people around the world that want to be under rockets, under fire, afraid for their lives, afraid for their children's lives forever. The only message that is truly universal is a message of hope. In our region here, everybody shouts death to somebody. The only way around that is to make sure that the deterrence is in place, that they don't act upon these threats, but also that the hope and that the message for hope is ready on the table and dialogue is taking place for that to happen. And we believe that President Trump can bring this to the region, and we in the region have always been advocating. How important was President Trump in the ceasefire negotiations? Well, let me make it very clear, Brian. When it comes to making peace, we know that we have a partner in the U.S. that is unlike any other when it comes to resolve. And when it comes to the openness, and this is what makes Qatar and the U.S. under Trump operate very well. It is the openness of the Trump administration, the openness of President Trump to speak to everybody and to anybody without any political posturing around conflict. That is what gets results done. And something else really interesting, Chris, despite all of the reports we've heard that there was this warning that Iran was going to attack, and I really pushed him on this, he insisted that they were shocked in Qatar, that they did not know that the missiles were coming. He says they would have never put themselves in that position during a negotiation. And I said, so you had no warning at all? And he just kept saying, no, we were totally shocked.
You believe it?
I mean, listen, I was here. They closed the airspace a couple of hours before, so it seems they must have known something, but maybe not all the detail that we thought.
And the reason it still matters, and people don't get this until they do the job, certainly not until they do it at the level that you do, it's why would he tell you that? And the answer has to be because they want to be seen as a fair broker that isn't a channel for bad actions. And they don't want to be in the business of knowing that something's bad is going to happen ahead of time, because it's very important for Qatar to be seen as a go-between right now, and that they're playing it fair on all sides. And that's why that interview was really helpful. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you taking the time and the risk to go there and get it for us.
Thanks, Chris.
Brian Entin, doing the job, as always. Back here at home, Democrats, Republicans continued their dispute over the damage done, but not for any really good reason, right? It'd be one thing if they were both really worried about what the regime was trying to do, but it isn't. It's just a game of gotcha. So you have the Senate briefing today. They all go in. They all come out with different takes. How? You got the same damn briefing. So you have Lindsey Graham who say, yeah, in those 3 strikes, it was obliterated. And you know he's only using that word because that's Trump's word. But here's what the Democrat had to say from Connecticut.
Knowing what you know now, if the president had come to Congress to get approval to authorize this mission, would he have had your vote?
No. Ultimately, the only way to truly constrain Iran's nuclear program is diplomacy. You cannot bomb knowledge out of existence. No matter how many scientists you kill, there are still people in Iran who know how to work centrifuges. The only path forward is diplomacy.
Now, look, here's my problem with that. One, I wanted to hear what he said about the intelligence and what the success of the bombings was. There's no question that they can still do it. It was about stopping what they have done so far. And how can Senator Murphy, who I keep trying to have come on the show, I respect him and I think he's part of the president future of that party, and he's very bright. Diplomacy with a terror organization that has done nothing but lie? Really? You think just straight diplomacy is going to get it done? Then how do we wind up here? So later in the day, Iran's foreign minister comes out and says, yeah, we have no plans to talk with the U.S. about a nuclear deal. Should we believe that, or are they just doing what they do most often, which is, false bravado? I want to bring in Democrat member of Congress Mike Quigley, who will get his briefing tomorrow. It's good to have you. Member of Congress, first of all, what is your take on my take that this questioning the success and trying to push that it didn't work reeks of politics?
Well, look, there's politics and everything, as you know, but there's some common understandings. And so if I may quote one of my favorite Republicans, I've been briefed on this plan in the past, and it was never meant to completely destroy the nuclear facilities, but rather cause significant damage. It was always known to be a temporary setback. That's what I've been briefed for 8 years on the Intel Committee, generally, not about specific issues. That's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican, Mr. McCall. He's absolutely right. So there's a problem with what the president did, which is not just ego or saying one side's right and one isn't. I think it's dangerous to overstate what has happened, right? You have to face the risk for what they are, not for what you want them to be. So I think the president has a problem with the intelligence community, and he's had since before he became president, because he often hears things he doesn't want to hear. And I think that's what happened in this case. So I get the issues. I get the concern. Iran can't be allowed to have a weapon. But the other point that you say when you say that diplomacy never works, look, because of pressure from China and a bunch of other factors, they did sign the JCPOA, and there's no evidence at all that they weren't in compliance with it. So it can't just be diplomacy. You have to have the abilities. But understanding what really happened and where we go from here, trying to be somewhere concerned first about the truth, to your point, is well taken.
So where do you think we need to go from here? The damage has been done. The ability to enrich has been slowed down at a minimum, right?
Absolutely.
But they're clearly going to try to do it and keep trying to do it. So what should America do?
What has worked before? And it can't be unilateral, and it obviously can't just be with the Israelis. It has to be from the Arab states. And again, when we got JCPOA done, a lot of that pressure came from a country that does have influence, right? It's in China's interest that Iran not have a weapon. It's in China's interest that there's not a war there because they buy 90% of Iran's oil. So they want that. It's however their motivations are. Their motivations are that a war doesn't help them. We were always told the only way you end this program is troops on the ground. So the polling that shows 85% of Republicans favor the strikes, I think that gets flipped if they're told the only way you're really going to obliterate this, finish this,
Sure.
what have you, is a war. They're not going to want that. So that tells you there's at least a path there, and you've bought yourself some time here. You know, I don't think
that is true, Mike, but I'll tell you what.
Netanyahu said.
We wouldn't have been in this problem if Congress hadn't lost its gumption after voting for the war in Iraq and having let presidents clearly exceed the powers of the War Powers Act and the 2001-2002 AUMFs that can't apply to any of the things that have happened in like the last 10 years.
We haven't declared war since 1942.
You guys don't want to do anything about it.
All right, look,
Right.
we haven't declared war since 1942. And so there's members on both sides who have pounded the table and said, we need to do this, or most commonly, we need to be tough. But for example, Syria during President Obama's administration, I think President Obama wanted to go. And for all
but he did it right.
The tough folks
he
who
did
said,
it right.
Yeah. Nobody went for the War Powers Act.
But that's because Obama did it right. Obama said to you guys,
that's right.
I need you to tell me whether or not I can do this. And Congress balked because Congress didn't want to own it. And Obama wound up getting out of the pinch. I remember interviewing him about that. And it was a little tense because I was like, hey, how many red lines you going to draw, brother? You know what I mean? You keep saying it's a red line and they keep crossing it and you don't do anything. And then he was like, I will, I won't. And then he went to you guys. Congress didn't want to own it and he got a pass. But that's the way it actually should work. This wouldn't have happened if Congress was demanding on taking its power back. But I appreciate you having a frank conversation about it.
No, look, and this is as good a time as any for Congress to talk about this with the President of the United States. And it's incumbent on the president to say, okay, where are you with this? You know, whatever he decides that he needs to do next. So it is the historical problems here go way back, and we both have to assert authorities and understand, look, those who voted on Iraq still hate that vote, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because of what it meant.
Because you got sold a bill of goods about yellow cake. I lived it.
So it scared a lot of them off from ever doing this again.
But you're not one of them, Mike. Let me ask you something. After you get the briefing, I promise I will give you more time than any cable television outlet if you want to come on and tell my audience what you're allowed to tell.
I can tell you what I get briefed on these things all the time. I've been briefed. I'm on the committee. I would tell you what Chairman McCall said is accurate, and I'll even get this. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said publicly, it's way too early to know the full damage. So I think I know enough now to tell the American people that we don't know enough now. Iran is an existential threat. We have to do something about it. And the executive and legislative branches have to work together to decide what's the best path forward. But I just have to get stuck on that point. They were in compliance with what was a diplomatic deal.
Yeah, I agree.
Mind you, Iran understood that there was a real military threat to them and an economic one, largely, I would suspect, from China. So we're not ruling that out, and diplomacy is going to have to play a critical role.
Mike Quigley, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show, being a fair broker. You're always welcome here.
Thank you. We'll talk.
All right, be well, Congressman. Mike Quigley. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, so there's a report out about what may happen next. And I want to ask a general who's very familiar with the region about whether or not he thinks it works and what the risks are. All right? Stay with us. So the bombing in Iran worked. It stopped what was happening where they hit. But for how long? And what do we do to stop that ability, period? Former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Mideast Policy is retired Army Brigadier General Mark Kimmett. I want his take. Thank you very much, General, for being with us. So does that sound right to you? The briefing is it's too soon to know the details, but where the bombs hit, they stopped the ability to do what was happening there, but we don't know where else they're doing it. We don't know where else they're storing anything. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it really does. I think the two people that have been most sober in their analysis and their communications is David Albright for the International Security Studies Institute, the former IAEA inspector who has many, many years doing this. And General Kane has been magnificent throughout all of this. He has been consistent. And they both say the same thing you did, severely damaged. And I think that's the best we can ask for right now.
So how do you stop them altogether? A report comes out that the administration is thinking of allowing Iran access to some more of those frozen funds to build civilian nuclear energy facilities, but they cannot enrich beyond that. Do you think that's the right move?
Well, I do. I think it's a great proposal. It would allow and take away from the Iranians the argument that they were using this for peaceful purposes and energy development. The good part about it is it would end nuclear enrichment in Iran, so there would never be a threat again that they would enrich beyond what is necessary for energy and medical purposes, and as a result couldn't develop a nuclear weapon. This is a proposal that's been pushed around for probably a decade. It's a great idea. To my mind, it has 0% chance of the Iranians accepting it. I do believe that it will just simply lead to another round of broken ceasefire and more military action. I think it's a great idea.
Well,
the Iranians won't accept it.
Part of a little bit of the codicil on it is, okay, and if you say no, the way Kimmett is suggesting, we're going to let Israel bomb you again. So there's going to be a price for you not wanting to do it. Let me ask you something, General. In your experience, what is the world of time frame of the ability to get up and going in a new place and enrich uranium to anything near 60%?
Well, the short answer is, since we don't know where all of their centrifuge locations are, and we don't know where the uranium is, we have no way of estimating that. But it takes a very, if you can get 60%, to get from 60 to 90 takes maybe 150 centrifuges. So if they have put away, hidden, concealed any amount of enrichment capability, they could get back on this immediately, which is the great fear that if they reject this deal, that means they're going to just start headstrong and moving very, very quickly to developing that capability again. Which of course means, of course, we're going to have to use military actions again.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that then it's a good time to move out of the population centers if you're living in Iran, unfortunately, for all the innocents that are under the heel of oppression of this Islamist extreme regime. General Kimmett, thank you for your perspective. You're welcome here all the time.
Sure, thanks.
4 minutes and 30 seconds. Stephen A., my man, has been listening. I want to get his take on the state of play around the bombast of these bombings. What matters? What's being ignored? The man, next. Stephen A. Smith is here. He sees the problems with the two parties, and he's watching what's going on, and it's a great time to get his take. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you. How you doing, my man?
I'm troubled. It seems like nothing can escape the binary battle to the bottom. Nobody can be a fair broker on anything. It's got to be advantage. And it looks like the Democrats believe the answer is to mirror MAGA and go straight populist, and the other side's the enemy. And I think you're seeing that about questioning the unknown with the bombing.
The only thing that I would challenge you on with that, Chris, is that you sound like it's something that's new. The Democrats were doing it when Biden was in office. Look at the extraordinary measures that they went through to try to ensure that Joe Biden win the election, or ultimately the Democrats win the election. Initially, they were chanting 4 more years for a man that was going to be 82 years of age come inauguration time. And then when they recognized that they weren't going to get away with that, they bypassed the democratic process to ensure that Kamala Harris was going to be the Democratic nominee. And now we're seeing so many things and hearing so many things about they were engaging in when we know good and well they would have have lost their minds if this was happening on the side of the GOP. So when you think about the accusations that they had levied against former President Trump at the time and the things that they were saying about him, his administration, members of the GOP in the House and the Senate that were in support of him and didn't speak out and weren't verbal enough and as vociferous as they could have been, just imagine what they would have said about it if it was the other way around. Think about some of the things that they said. So it's not new to me. It's not a surprise, but it's incredibly unfortunate, and I don't blame you for feeling the way that you feel. It does seem as if there's a level of extremism that has been more so adopted by the left in this day and age to match what they believe they were getting from MAGA. But here's the interesting part. Trump decides to bomb 3 nuclear sites in Iran, okay? And you have people that are conspicuous members of MAGA who spoke out against him, labeling themselves proud nationalists, isolationists, whatever you want to call it. It could be a Tucker Carlson. It could be a Steve Bannon, who both you and I have spoken to. It could be Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, amongst others. These are people that normally are staunch supporters of all things Trump, and they spoke out against him, whereas folks on the left, they were finding their own reasons to obviously speak out against him and be very, very predictable because their attitude and their approach is to be all things and anything anti-Trump. Apparently, they believe that's what's going to keep them remaining in office and elevate their level of power.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about there on the right. I actually think that's a huge miscalculation by, MTG. She's not really a player anyway. But the pod people, okay, the pod bros, going bad on Trump is a huge miscalculation because they were nothing before him and they're going to be nothing after him. And they're just lucky he did not seem to worry enough about their criticism to crush them, because he could do what he does best, which is just start talking about them by name and how they're un-American or whatever he wants to call one of his critics. I only point out what I say about the left because I've never seen AOC lead before. I've never seen AOC lead on the heels of going around with Bernie talking openly about being socialists and socialism being the answer and calling for impeachment as like the lead factor from the left. That's new for her.
Well, 2 things. Number one, I don't want to be disrespectful to our representatives, whether they be in the House or the Senate. But the reality is you were right on the money in your opening monologue yesterday when you talked about how she's been in office for years, how Bernie Sanders has been in office for 20 years. They make suggestions. They speak very, very loudly. They're very, very popular. They go out there in television shows and beyond. But at the end of the day, what have they really, really done? The answer is there's but so much they can do. I certainly wouldn't accuse them of doing nothing because they don't care. I'm saying you've accomplished pretty close to nothing because you simply don't have that kind of cachet and that kind of power where all you can do is be a mouthpiece. That's basically it. Whereas you look at Trump and what you're saying about the folks on the mega right, I would challenge you on that, Chris. I get where you're coming from, and Trump can crush any politician. The world that we're living in, my brother, not when it comes to these podcasters, not when it comes to voices. When you think about Bannon and the millions of followers that he may have, when you think about somebody like a Tucker Carlson, when you think about somebody that I just interviewed over a week ago, Candace Owens, she's got nearly 5 million followers, got nearly 5 million subscribers and millions on social media. Those voices ain't going away just because Trump criticizes them or tries to crush them, because you have folks that refuse to capitulate even to him when it comes to their voices being heard. And Trump can do a lot of things, and he can do a lot of damage to elected officials. But you know what the podcasters can do that Trump can't do? He might give folks a voice subliminally or indirectly because he echoes their sentiments and he has that kind of platform. But podcasters can literally give you a voice because they can put you on a microphone and let you speak to their audiences while they're talking directly back at you. And suddenly you find yourself like-minded and you're not going away. That's the world that we're living in. That's what's changed about today's world compared to what it once was. So I would give you a little push push back on that. But in the end, I would tell you this. This is why the GOP are sitting pretty right now. It's not just because of the power that they have in office with a president that won the popular vote, the electoral college vote in every swing state, and increased with black voters, young voters, Hispanic voters, etc. It's also because their voices are resonating better. If you look at a lot of voices on the GOP side, they're a lot more popular than the voices on the left. So the left is going to have to figure that out. They're going to have to gain or elevate in the realm of populism in order to ultimately resonate and really make a dent to the way and in the fashion that they're hoping to do so. If they don't pull that off on a national scale, if they don't pull that off, it's going to amount to nothing. They'll lose the midterms. They'll lose the general election in 2028.
Magnified minorities dominate our politics now. You have 5-6 million people watching you. You know, you're not in great shape as a network television show, but as a podcast, you know, you're hegemonic. Right. What my point about Trump is, when he kicked Steve Bannon out and said he's crazy, the war room was getting no traction. When he took him back and made it okay for the MAGA people to say, yeah, I'm listening to Bannon, all of a sudden he became a premium commodity in that space. I'm just saying there's a price for fealty. There's an upside and there's a downside. So they have to be careful, but I am not discounting the power of the podcast. That's for sure.
But you also, I get you, but you also have to take into account that Trump assists in that matter because of the level of inconsistency from time to time. Once upon a time, he's campaigning, he's coming across as somebody that's nationalistic, that's not interested in engaging in wars or anything of the sort. Suddenly, that has changed. We think about him and what he said. He's talking about, you know, federal holidays and how people aren't working. What is the day that he chooses to echo that sentiment? It's on Juneteenth. By the way, in 2020, he was campaigning with the black community, talking about how he wanted to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. So he's learning, I shouldn't say learning because he's pretty much mastered doing what's politically expedient, but in the process, what he's giving way to is the level of consistency he was once known for in terms of his verbiage with his followers and his constituents. He doesn't seem to be as consistent as he was before, which means one thing above all else. He's feeling himself because he's taking chances, he's doing things, he's leading the belief that it's working out, it's emboldening him. And then when you look at whether it's cabinet members, whether it's politicians on Capitol Hill or anybody else, I mean anybody that does anything for him, notice how no matter what they've accomplished, they must always take a few moments to pay homage to the president, to talk about how great he is, how wonderful he is, how marvelous he is. He is just this fabulous human being, the great leader that has been descended down upon us by God himself. God has touched his shoulder, and this is what is going on. This is what they're saying. This is what they're feeling. Look at Pete Hegseth. Look at the Defense Secretary of the United States. Listen to him talk when he was going off on the media. You guys just want to go after Trump. Excuse me. And then you try to shield yourself in any potential cynicism or criticism, whether it be towards you, towards Trump, or anybody else, by using our American soldiers, knowing that no decent, God-fearing American in this country would ever dare speak against our soldiers who put their lives on the line for us. And because we're questioning you and how effective you were, you want to hide behind the military. This is the kind of stuff that goes on. And even in the midst of all of that, he still made sure, let's praise Donald Trump, our modern day godlike figure. This is how they're rolling right now. So if you're noticing it and I'm noticing it, you know Trump is, and you know how that makes him feel. And if that makes him feel that good and that much more emboldened, who knows what mistakes he may make down the road in going against that very base who has supported him. Because instead of needing their support, he's convinced they'll need him. And who knows what that will lead him to do. That's what we need to keep a watchful eye on.
That is some very, very wise words. Stephen A. Smith, thank you very, very much. I like you in front of that White House like that, by the way. I see you in front of the Capitol right now. See you in front of the Capitol. I know what you're doing. I know what you're putting out there, Stephen A. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. 29 days of testimony, 34 witnesses. The prosecution in the Sean Diddy Combs trial presented its final argument, also dropped some charges. I'm going to give you a quick take on what they did well and not so well and what the work is for the defense tomorrow. All right, NewsNation legal contributors Jesse Weber, Sarah Azari. Jesse's going to do the prosecution, Sarah the defense. Jesse, what was the plus minus on the close today for the prosecution?
They did exactly what they needed to do. They condensed a very complicated case into a simplified version for this jury. Racketeering conspiracy, there was a criminal agreement, the assistants knew what was going on, helped out. They methodically went through each and every one of the underlying predicate crimes: forced labor, arson, kidnapping, drug offenses, sex trafficking. The biggest win that they got there when it came to Jane and Cassie, there was a lot that you heard. Not every instance is sex trafficking. You only need to find one instance to find him guilty, and they laid out concrete examples. In transportation, to engage in prostitution, you look at the Amex records, the travel receipts, the text messages, the phone messages from Sean Combs. It was clear he paid for and arranged for the transportation of men for sex work. I think they hit a home run today.
Sarah, they dropped some of the charges. What's the opportunity for the defense?
I think the defense needs to focus on consent, on all of the copious number of text messages that show consent. They need to make a case for their star witness, which was money grab. The idea that these women didn't stay in these relationships out of fear. They stayed out of the get that they signed up for. They also need to focus on the governmental overreach, that the government was so zealous to prosecute this famous music mogul that they have these big holes in their case. Where is Christina Quorum, who was the co-conspirator complicit in these crimes? Where are the two other victims of sex trafficking? So it's just as important as the evidence is presented, as it's also important that the evidence that's missing. That's also very important. And I think, Chris, look, ultimately, you know, Diddy's at the center of this trial as the defendant, but the verdict here is going to be the mirror that we hold up as a society. Where are we in this Me Too moment, post-Me Too moment, and how far are we going to go to look beyond consent and turn it into coercion? Because certainly the shame and the resentment that these women felt over the years doesn't convert consent to coercion.
Solo Rico is very rare, but we'll see what they would do with it tomorrow, and then I'll ask you guys what you think is going to happen. But I got to say, you guys look like a host team for a TV show, by the way. I'm just saying, I don't know who else is watching this right now.
We have going on here right now.
You guys, you're a little too good looking, but man, you guys would be a nice show. Anyway, Jesse, Sarah, thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Good seeing you, Chris.
Most play the game, here we expose it. And I hand that now to Leland Vittert. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.